You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact that you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. They make it super simple. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with coverage options tailored to your choices. Plus, you'll see which discounts you may qualify for, like the online quote discount or savings for paying in full. In fact, 99% of Progressive Auto customers earn at least one discount. See if you could save when you switch to Progressive. You'll feel good about making a savvy choice. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little extra cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Howard, my dad was T-boned by a utility vehicle and is in surgery now. What should I do?
I'm sorry to hear about that. It's really great that you're getting him the medical care and treatment that he needs right now. These are three important things that I think you need to know. Injuries are unexpected and turn lives upside down. I'm Howard Ankin, and I'm here to help. If you or a loved one have been hurt at work or in a car, truck, or rideshare accident, call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal. That's Ankin Law.
We know we're in a really good spot, and I feel like we're not really, looking at the standings or things like that, just because there's still a lot of baseball to be left. But, it's definitely, a good achievement, that we can look at right now and see that, things are going in the right direction.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and you heard from Colson Montgomery at the beginning part of the intro talking about how excited the team is. Here's White Sox second baseman Chase Meidroth sharing his feelings.
Yeah, energy's big. I love this game. I love winning. I love my teammates here. I love the city. So, we know what we're playing for. It's a lot more than for ourselves, and we're playing for each other every day. And so that's, the energy is it's natural. It's easy when you come into this locker room. And, you got this group of guys. So, I can't thank them enough for allowing my personality to come out like that.
Why is everyone in a festive mood? Because the White Sox just swept the Kansas City Royals. They have a 5-game winning streak. They're above 500. In the famous words of Hawk Harrelson, don't stop now, boys. It is May 14th, 2026. The Chicago White Sox are 22-21. Just a game back of the Cleveland Guardians of first place in the American League Central, and they have the 5th best record in the American League. In this episode, we're going to be recapping the series against the Royals and preview what is one of the most highly anticipated Crosstown Classics as the Chicago Cubs roll into town. Joining me in the festive times of Chicago White Sox baseball in 2026 is Sox Machine's managing editor, Jim Margulis, as James Fegan is at the stadium gathering more video and quotes to continue to report on the White Sox sweeping the Kansas City Royals. So now, Jim, on that front, the White Sox are 5-2 this season against the Royals. The last two seasons combined, they were 4-22, so they've already beat the Royals more in 2026 than they did all of 2024 and 2025. But Jim, the Chicago White Sox on May 14, 2026 are 22-21. What a time to be alive. What are your early thoughts and impressions of what the White Sox have been able to achieve?
It's amazing based on everything that had kind of gone right, but also a lot of things that had gone wrong with like their outfield not being what they thought it was going to be, with like Luis Angel Acuna being a zero, with Edgar Caro being a disappointment when he had a chance to prove himself as the number one catcher. Like so many things that could have really just wrecked the White Sox. Instead, like Chris Getz and the coaching staff has found a way around it by getting like a Randal Grichuk off the scrap heap, by severe platooning, emptying the bench, especially for like the bottom half of the order. Like Venable is not afraid to pinch hit 3 guys in a row. for instance, to cover shortcomings the best that he possibly can. And then you have the bullpen, which is rounding into enough of a shape. Like you've seen that, Seranthony Dominguez, Grant Taylor, Brian Hudson seems like a pretty sturdy back end. But then you see like Jordan Hicks come in, and we talked about him being a fairly anonymous member of this bullpen. He delivers a big inning. Tyler Davis in a low leverage or medium leverage situation, but given that the White Sox had blown leads in the first game of the series, like he came in, delivered a scoreless inning. He allowed an inherited runner to score from third, but calmed the game down, prevented a flare-up from happening, and then Sean Newcomb took it from there. So you're having the second wave of outfielders shoring things up. You're having the second wave of relievers come through when the best arms needed a breather. And that's a hell of a way to get to 500 and then over 500 against a team that had given them fits for the last 2 years, but also like a lot of the last decade.
And I could see where, the excitement is just rampant right now, everywhere. Social media, in the Sox Machine comments. I'm not going to tell anyone to stop dreaming. If you saw my tweets this morning, I'm trying to come up with ideas, Jim, that the White Sox should go trade for Mike Trout and Byron Buxton to help out with the outfield. Like, I'm even bordering delusion right now on what to dream about this White Sox team. And like, I'm glad you pointed out everything that has gone wrong for the White Sox, because in a lot of ways they shouldn't be in the position that they are. Their opening day starter, Shane Smith, got optioned because of poor performance, and now was a rotator cuff issue. We continue to bring up that, yes, the White Sox starting pitching depth right now is a bit shaky. We don't know if someone gets hurt or has to go on the IL, who is the next starting pitcher to step up. The White Sox still haven't had Kyle Teel appear in a game. Sam Antonacci, Jim, Hannibal and Andrew Vaughn and Gavin Sheets and learn how to play the outfield just to gain some playing time. And in all of this, the White Sox, who started 1-5 this year, were outscored 52-21 in their first 6 games, are 21-16 since the opening week. They have scored 168 runs. They've only allowed 145, so the run differential is plus 27. If you do it by per game math, the White Sox offense since the first 6 games of the year is averaging 4.5 runs a game, and they are only allowing slightly below 4 runs per game at 3.97 runs per game. And even like having Dan Zaborski recently on the podcast and running Zips, and Zips is thinking the White Sox are more like a 72-90 win team. There's no way with the roster that they have and the talent on hand, they're going to be able to hold this up. But I pose a question to you, Jim. What if? What if they can hold it up? If you just recently wrote about Miguel Vargas and his hot streak, if you didn't get a chance to read that feature, and Miguel Vargas had another strong series against the Royals, Jim, if you have a solid middle of the order in Miguel Vargas, Munetaka Murakami, and Colson Montgomery, if the role players are picking up the slack, you got a surprise ace all-star performance out of Davis Martin, and the bullpen is holding, and Will Venable is pushing the right buttons, instead of like us for years trying to figure out what could go wrong, let's take a moment. What could go right for the White Sox?
Yeah, especially with Teel returning. I think that's really, you don't want to put too great of expectations on a player who's a second-year player coming off a grade 2 hamstring strain. So it feels like it's all setting up for Teal's going to come and then this team's going to explode. And then like perhaps like he's going to struggle or show some rust and like the bat's not going to be there. And then, you hope that just because Caro has been, it's just been so tough for him over the first 6-7 weeks. And, Drew Romo's done a good job of being like the fourth catcher coming in and being fairly interesting, but he's also not somebody you expect to shoulder a load, but like them getting by, you hope that like they've set such a low bar for catcher that Teel, even if he's inconsistent or, needs a little time to get back up to speed, like he's still better than what they had. But I think the other, kind of in between this hodgepodge of role players, fourth outfielders kind of rotating through the 3 outfield spots, And then you have like the 3-4-5 hitters or 2-3-4 hitters in Murakami, Montgomery, and Vargas. You also have like the middle class, which I think is like Sam Antonacci and Chase Mydroth, the grind set twins, as James called them, which I like a lot.
I love the nickname.
But they provide, and here's, knock on wood that Antonacci's like little limp into second base wasn't, anything more than a cramp. But, they provide the kind of contrast to that middle of the order in terms of putting the ball in play, being lefty, being righty, being able to bat leadoff. In the case of Mydroth, batting fifth when it suits him, and like providing some contact after the swing and miss guys to not set up an easy inning for opposing managers. Like they provide, I think, enough versatility, and with their contact, with their defense, provide, at least Mydroth's case, providing plus defense at second base, that it's a dimension they didn't have last year when Mydroth was banged up and when left field was awful, and they didn't have really many on base guys after like the top 2 or 3 in the order. So like that's, I think, what gives this lineup a depth that they didn't have, or he couldn't count on at the start of the season, or couldn't count on Antonacci making such a smooth transition to the majors. But yeah, it really seems like the White Sox have found something with this hitting program that they have in terms of like building out, whether it's Ryan Fuller, whether it's Derek Showman, whether it's just a mix of both, like having the information apparatus fully in place and, the bat speed training in place, that they're able to generate depth and generate length in the lineup from players who, based on their backgrounds, if they went to the White Sox, you wouldn't have thought they had a chance.
Very true. The White Sox are playing these guys. This is the last team in Major League Baseball that would ever give them an opportunity in playing time. I recently went on a Chicago Cubs podcast, and they asked, what should we expect out of this offense? And it feels like 2 offenses in one right now. Jim, with you mentioning Mydroth and Antonacci, yes, as Cubs fans, and we'll dive more into this series later in the podcast, but for any opposing team right now with the White Sox, when you have Murakami, Vargas, and Montgomery coming up, yes, you should be worried about the home run, because those 3 guys right now are on pace to hit more than 30 homers this year. But the bottom of the lineup, even though they're not very consistent on getting on base, and they're not all that great of offensive players, Jim, it is pure chaos when they get on the base, and you don't know what to expect, especially if there's a runner on third and here comes Tristan Peters. A bunt is coming. Like, as an infielder, you got to play in, and if he capitalizes, then you got to play deep, because here come the big boppers. There's a lot of people online that are like, I'm falling in love with this team. It's a weird lineup. It really is. And I don't know if I want to debate if it's sustainable, because I think there's a part of me that's like, I don't know if it really is. But it's unique enough this early in the season that it can just cause fits for opposing teams, because they kind of have to prepare for 2 different offenses in the same game. And I guess that's been an advantage for the White Sox so far. I mean, in 3 straight games against the Royals, Jim, they scored 6 runs.
Yeah, I would say it kind of comes to mind, they're like the hitting equivalent of an effectively wild pitcher.
Sure, yeah, that's a good way of putting
it.
In
the sense that, you have a game plan against them, but also you don't know exactly what they're going to look like on a given day. You don't know from inning to inning whether they're going to look stupid or you're going to look stupid just because of how much chaos they can create and just how much you have to account for. And I do think there's a little bit of a confusion to it, kind of like the Royals, which, that'll, give some White Sox fans fits comparing the White Sox to the Royals. But when the Royals were in their Dayton Moore heyday, I think they had that kind of element of just, we're going to play good defense. We're going to run the bases really, really hard. And we're not going to strike out that much to try to maximize the amount of base runners we get, or the amount of contact that allows our base runners to run really, really hard. And the White Sox aren't quite that severe yet, and you don't want them to be at right field. You want them to have power. You want them to count on at least a portion of their lineup being regularly able to put the ball over the fence. But for the guys that they don't have, especially with the outfield being this this mess right now, that in lieu of power, you do want speed, you want defense, you want some complementary skills that allow Venable to play the matchups. He might have one matchup to play, and if he has to play it too early, then they might be screwed the rest of the game. But I think with the way they've also been pitching to this point, they've been able to stay in games long enough or have a lead to where they don't have to get desperate until the late innings. Like in this case, like this past series, they led for most of the series. They blew leads, but they didn't have to push any buttons in the first 6 innings of the game. They had all their options available in the final 3 innings if they needed them, and it paid off. So I think when you have the pitching that's doing enough, that gives this lineup enough chances to do something, whether it's hit back-to-back homers or score from first on a double that gets slightly away from outfielder because they're running hard all the way. So I think it's a very scrappy, grindy, to use another term that might give some White Sox fans fits. But this is like the good kind of grinding in the sense that like they are creating something out of nothing, but they don't look like they're not making it look difficult, or they're not making it look like baseball is torture and they just have to, just give 110% effort for one run. It's more of effort of like, it's just playing really hard, but like in a way that's focused, or, has a direction that isn't, it might be slightly desperate, but it's kind of the good desperate, or it's kind of like the fight where like, getting into a fight with a crazy person, like, you don't like you might, even if you think you can outgun them, like you might not know exactly what they're going to do next. You might not know what's in their back pocket. And that just provides like, I guess, watching Antonacci like force an error on a routine grounder to second and then get to second base, like it might put some teams that don't, that are in the same kind of class as the White Sox in terms of having their own flaws on edge.
Well, in this upcoming series, I mean, Antonacci's going to test Pico Armstrong's throwing arm. Like, Pico Armstrong can run it down. His throws sometimes can be wild. A single into the gap, PCA can get to it. I have a feeling Antonacci's going to test him. And if that throw goes wayward, then you could probably feel some angst from Cubs fans, like, PCA, what's going on? But Antonacci's going to test you. So many teams over the most recent years, last 5 years, Jim, have been testing the White Sox. And it's made us pull our hair of teams just gaining that extra base. And maybe, just maybe, Chris Getz has delivered the right personnel to Will Venable that, at least at the bottom part of the lineup, you feel confident that they can do that. And they can make opposing teams right now pull their hair out. Because, again, just like the random good things that happened in the series. The first game, Derek Hill, of all players, his second pinch hit home run of the season, gives the White Sox the lead. Bobby Witt Jr. is probably thinking, I have a leadoff single, and Derek Hill, with the web jam, robs him of the hit. And, of course, very fitting, Derek Hill makes the final catch to end the game in foul territory. Jared Kelenic, who is trying to not drown right now with the White Sox, comes up with a big 2-hit game and a big 2-run double. Toot plan, of course. It can't be nearly perfect. A little bit of chaos. But he's trying to gain that extra base and trying to help this team win. So he had a big game on Wednesday. And you mentioned Grichuk. Everybody looks at the lineup and they're like, Thursday's a Sunday night lineup. Colson Montgomery's not playing. And Grichuk hits a home run on the first inning and drives in 4 runs. And the White Sox win 6-2. And Tristan Peters is gaining more confidence. And Chase Maidroth and Sam Antonacci. I have a feeling Cubs fans are going to look at this White Sox lineup and be like, who are these guys? And it's like, this team is 22-21.
Yeah, I think as long as the pitching keeps the games close, I think that's where these guys can kind of factor in, because, Kelenic aside, we're still trying to figure out exactly, how much of his former prospect stock you can possibly capitalize on. Like, some of the at-bats are good, some of the at-bats are bad. The defense is okay. Like, we've seen worse defense in right field, but he's also had some plays where, especially like in foul territory, I think a couple of them where communication could have been better. But otherwise, like, Tristan Peters does something well, does a couple things well. Derek Hill does a couple things well. And if you're able to save those guys for late in the game when they might make a difference, or you put them in a lineup against a starting pitcher that they know is going to last in the game and not be some kind of opener bullpen game that can be swapped out and wreck a lineup, it can last, or they can provide something even if you're not counting them going 2 for 4. And that gives Will Venable something to grab onto as he's trying to like figure out what to do with lineup spots 6 through 9 and like a good starting points. I think, should the Cubs bombard them in the first inning, fall behind like I do. And, perhaps like that's an overstatement because the White Sox were able to claw back in the Seattle series after a big deficit. So like they've shown the ability to counterpunch, especially against good pitchers, Logan Gilbert, Jose Soriano, like they've done fairly well there. They got Bubic after Bubic got him earlier in the year. They are
they gave San Diego scare.
Yeah. So it's a case where like they have, they perhaps I'm overstating this possible flaw of just like, how often can they come back if they have to exhaust all their lineup swaps earlier than like the late innings and high leverage situations where it's perfectly suitable to do so.
Sure.
But as long as the pitching is doing what it's doing, and it might keep doing it, might not, but it might. Like they're throwing strikes at least for the most parts, and that helps a lot. So, it's kind of all working together right now. It's a delicate balance, I think, but when it works, you can kind of see the formula and see that it's more than luck. It's just, one thing you throw it out of whack and then it's back to square one, but that hasn't happened in quite a while.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
Eric Fedde gives up 2 homers in the first inning of the first game. I thought he bounced back nicely and gave the team an opportunity to win the game, which the White Sox did come back and win that game. And then Anthony Kay, we've been worried about Anthony Kay. Like, does he have to move to the bullpen because he may not be able to handle a workload? And I got to say, Anthony Kay in his last 2 starts has been strong for the White Sox. I know he gave up that leadoff triple in the 7th inning, but to get 6 innings out of Anthony Kay before this upcoming series against the Chicago Cubs, and the fact that it's just Tyler Davis, he pitches 1 inning, and Sean Newcomb gets a 2-inning save. I mean, you got a pretty fresh bullpen now for this upcoming weekend series against the Cubs. Really, the only one that we might be a little concerned about, and I don't know if it's like a strong concern, is Noah Schultz. And it's 3 straight starts, Jim, with more walks and strikeouts for Noah. I don't think the White Sox would even think about sending him down to work on his command issues. I think this is just something that Schultz is just going to have to figure out on the major league level because they really need him right now every 5th day. But he was so strong in the first 2 innings, but it was clear in the 3rd inning he was starting to lose as far as his release point, and he just could not command any of his pitches. What's the next step here? Because he's not going to start against the Cubs. The next time that he's going to start is going to be on the road in Seattle, which that will be a tough game for him.
It seems like there's probably some mechanical things they can look at in terms of like when it comes to throwing strikes. That's whether it's just rotation timing of his arm coming through. Perhaps it's a case of like going to the stretch after going a 9 up, 9 down and not having it there. Like, seems like it should be fixable, if only because like he's such a good strike thrower in the minors. It does remind me a little bit in terms of just the fact that, right now the rest of the rotation's faring pretty well and he's like an outlier in terms of how difficult he's making it on himself. But it reminds me a little bit of like the 5th starter hell days of the White Sox when they'd rotate all these pitching prospects through and none of them stuck. And like, Kip Wells would be like one of them, except then you look at their numbers and like, oh, they couldn't throw strikes in the minors. And that was the problem. And just, there wasn't a great understanding of like walk rates in prospect development at that time, and how it would translate from AAA.
Jason Beret was one of my favorite pitchers in 1993. Podcast
Those
listeners,
numbers are
just
insane.
look at his walk rate.
It's even before the injury. Like he was, even when he was successful, it was weird how he did like triple digit walk numbers. You'd see a good ERA in AAA and think like, oh, he's ready for a call up, and then you see he's walking like 6 batters per 9, and just like that's why it didn't work out. But now I think like prospects are covered a lot more in depth than they were 20, 30 years ago. So it's you kind of know what you're getting. But in the case of Schultz, the strike throwing hasn't been a problem. So unless like his knee is flaring up again or something like that, which was I think the root cause of why he struggled to throw strikes 2 years ago, or a year ago, I should say, felt like 2 years ago based on how he looked coming out this season, that, unless he's hiding something like that or battling through it, then it's a case of like, it should be fixable, and perhaps, give him an extra day when you can, and some work on the side, try to get right. Like he's going to be somebody who probably has to be skipped at some point just because he hasn't thrown 100 innings in a season yet. So there may be opportunities to do some side work or some strategically deployed injured list stints or optioning, what have you, just to give him that breather. But perhaps one might be coming up at some point if he doesn't get right. But right now, without any kind of heir apparent or obvious 6 starter candidate in Charlotte, they just kind of got to keep doing what they're doing. And, it's easy to mask one guy every 5 days. If like somebody like Fetty, if his peripherals start to catch up to him, or if K regresses back to what he was early on this season, then, it starts to get hairier and you have to kind of swap out one of these problems. But right now it's manageable when it's just 1 out of 5.
He's so tall. Like when you say mechanics, like that's kind of my concern here. And we are in uncharted waters, Jim. I know we're one of the longest running White Sox podcasts. This is our 13th season. We've been podcasting about the White Sox. This is the first time we've ever had to talk about and break down a starting pitcher who's close to 6'11". Like he's just an inch shy of being 7 feet tall. When you talk about all of these mechanics and trying to stay on track and try to be consistent, rotation and just even pressing off of the rubber and finding a consistent landing point, these limbs are huge. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like, I don't know how you do figure this out as far as being consistent, other than Noah needs to figure this out on his own on what feels right for him. And I know that's a big thing that Brian Bannister has always said. That's why I think, without no question, I don't think anyone was bringing this point up, but even if it's another start against Seattle where he's walking more than striking out, I still think the White Sox should let him figure it out in Chicago, because I don't know if it is because of the limbs and his height and it's the inconsistency that he's still trying to figure out how to pitch with his body. I think you're just better off trying to figure that out with the major league staff and the biomechanics team in Chicago than sending him down in Charlotte. Because I don't know what he would figure out in Charlotte. So I'm okay right now that he's walking more than striking out. The White Sox are finding a way to win games, but hopefully he does figure it out. Because
it could be like the third deck effect too, to where we saw him looking really overamped in his debut, and he's calmed it down since to where it's not so obvious, but perhaps, problems lead to overthrowing or trying to push past it, and just, control issues compound, and just might be still getting a handle on, just adrenaline. But yeah, I mean, like a lot of ways it could go with a guy this tall, like you said, and with just a rookie pitcher in general. Like you have the common problems of trying to figure out major league hitters, and then you have the outlier problems of just being freakishly tall.
You mentioned the third deck. Sacramento doesn't have a third deck, and that was his best start, was at a minor league stadium. I hope that's not the case. Like you will have to get over that, Noah.
Yeah.
You're really good. You're really talented.
And he probably will. Like it's that case. Like I'm not saying that like in a judgmental way, just trying to cover all the bases in terms of just, having seen him look obviously overthrowing and admitting that he did have like jitters his first game. Like, wouldn't be out of hand to say that, it might flare up from time to time as the adrenaline spikes, and, being somebody who can overpower hitters or is used to it, being able to throw, 97 from such a weird arm slot that perhaps he is used to, like, what's the line between like overpowering and overthrowing? And that might be a case of just, what he's trying to get a handle on right now.
That's a good point. Again, Schultz's next probable start will be on the road in Seattle.
We've all been there. You're away for the weekend, the big game is on, and you realize you're restricted from watching. Or maybe you're trying to check the latest lines on your betting app, but your local network is blocking the site. These are the ultimate unforced errors. You can prevent this from happening to you with IPVanish. IPVanish is the powerhouse VPN designed to keep you in the game no matter where you are. IPVanish helps you stay connected to your favorite team and streaming services while you travel. But it's not just about watching the game. For the bettors out there, IPVanish provides an extra layer of security and privacy that helps you access your account safely on public Wi-Fi. Plus, IPVanish is lightning fast, so you won't have to worry about lag during those crucial live betting moments. Right now, get a massive discount at IPVanish.com. That's IPVANISH.com to get started today. Secure your play and go to IPVanish.com.
And now let's review the upcoming Crosstown Classic between the Chicago Cubs and the Chicago White Sox. And Jim, you had a little fun fact for this series that I find hard to believe.
Yeah, it seems like a couple of national reporters had this, so it must have been shared out by a team or some agency. But Jesse Rogers, I'll read his tweet saying, the White Sox sweep the Royals, pushing the record to 22-21, setting up a great matchup for rivalry weekend against the Cubs. Incredibly, the last time the two teams faced each other when both teams were above 500 was June 2008, excluding 2020.
That's wild.
Yeah. It's like, both teams are not good at the same time.
Yeah. Wow. That was Ozzie and Lou, right? And that Pepsi commercial?
Yeah. I'm a North Side guy.
Oh, man. Well, hopefully you don't bring back that commercial. I don't think Will Venable and Craig Counsell have the enthusiasm that Ozzie Guillen and Lou Piniella had. But for this series, it's going to be a juiced atmosphere at Rate Field. Friday and Saturday are already sold out, and we'll see what happens on Sunday. A heat wave is coming into Chicago, as all three games should be in the 80 degrees. And shout out to our friends, Chicago Sports Bums. If you are going to the Saturday game, look for their flag. They're hosting a tailgate in Lot B for Saturday. So if you're looking for a place to pregame before the Saturday game, the Chicago Sports Bums will be your friends. Again, look for their flag in Lot B. The Chicago Cubs are 28-16. They just recently beat the Atlanta Braves 2-0, and old friend Chris Sale. The Cubs are currently in first place in the National League Central by 2.5 games over the Milwaukee Brewers. In their last 10, they are 6-4. Away from Wrigley Field, they're 10-11. They are 18-5 at home. They have been very good at home. I think they have won 13 straight home games. So luckily for the White Sox, they are not playing these games at Wrigley Field. But the first news item, and probably in the forefront of White Sox fans, with how he's been hitting in AAA and as far as his rehab process, could Kyle Teel be available for this series? This is White Sox manager Will Venable explaining where Teel is at with his rehab.
We're going to take that day by day. He's still got a few scheduled games. We want to make sure that he's able to get to 9 innings and recover well. So there's still several days of that schedule. And then, as he continues to check boxes, we'll kind of evaluate day to day.
You know what he's doing? He's feeling great. I mean, what are the reports you've got on that?
The reports are good. He's feeling good. He's recovering well. He's been challenged to run first and home. That went well. He ran well and felt good. He's been swinging the bat well. Seeing pitches, one game behind the plate, one game at the DH. So all good stuff so far.
So, Jim, we talked about in a previous episode that we did not want the White Sox to rush Kyle Teel. I think Will Venable has made it very clear. The earliest that we're going to see Kyle Teel rejoin the Chicago White Sox is maybe next week, as the White Sox want to continue to follow the process. This is a good process, right? Because you want to be able to make sure that he can catch a full 9-inning game multiple times before you expect him to do it on the major league level.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't want another Austin Hayes situation of calling him back while he's not 100% or didn't see his rehab stint all the way through, and they have to try to manage his playing time or his efforts in what could be the biggest series of the year for the White Sox, depending on how much winning they have left in them over the remainder of the season. Given that he pulled his hamstring trying to leg out a double in the World Baseball Classic, I imagine he'd want to give the same efforts against the Cubs in a sold out rate field. This is protecting him from himself, protecting the White Sox from themselves. And as cool as it would be for Teel to come back for this, there are no extra points. There might be an extra win perhaps if Teel could come back, but it could just as well be he struggles out of the gates. He's not meaningfully different from Carroll or Romo in his first week back in the lineup. And, what was it all for? So, I think perfectly fine. I encourage them to be this cautious with somebody who, if the White Sox are going to win the rest of the way and be a team that's 500 or better, it's going to be because Kyle Teel helped a lot over the remaining 4 months.
I think it's more important for the White Sox, especially now if we have to change gears and talk about a surprise contending White Sox team in the division, to have Kyle Teel healthy and 100% ready to go for those 7 straight division games at the end of this month at home against the Minnesota Twins and the Detroit Tigers. I feel like that's more important for the White Sox right now and for their chances to make it the postseason than trying to rush Kyle Teel for what will be a very entertaining and grab a bunch of headline series against the Chicago Cubs for their chances of taking this from what a cool moment to let's get into the postseason. The White Sox need a healthy Kyle Teel against the division foes. So I'm with you, Jim. I'm glad the White Sox are taking it easy. We'll see if Drew Romo, who's been hitting homers, he's been providing an impact, and whatever production Edgar Carroll can provide offensively through this weekend. Your pitching probables for this series. Friday night is a 6:40 p.m. Central Time start. Edward Cabrera, the big offseason transaction to help with the starting pitching staff for the Chicago Cubs, will take the ball. He's got a 3.88 ERA this year. Sean Burke will make the start for the White Sox on Friday night. Saturday night, 6:10 p.m. Central Time. Check the weather. Some rain is supposed to come through, but hopefully it stays away. Jameson Taillon will make the start for the Chicago Cubs, and the Dart, Davis Martin, will take the ball for the White Sox Saturday night. And then on Sunday, it is Colin Ray for the Chicago Cubs against Eric Fetty for the White Sox. That is a 1:10 p.m. Central Time start. That is Kids Day as well at the White Sox Stadium, and that's right before they make their way out west for the final West Coast road trip as the White Sox head to Seattle. I have a couple public service announcements for those attending the games this weekend. If you're driving to the stadium, you want to take the highway and get off the 31st Street exit. There's been a lot of road construction on Pershing, so expect some backup there. If you have taken the side streets, you cannot take 37th from Halstead, right outside Charlers Pump, to the stadium. There is massive water pipe construction in which it's very difficult for me. That's my path walking to the stadium. It's hard for me to walk around that. It's impossible for cars to get through. So remember, 35th Street outside the stadium is closed for a period of time before first pitch. It's going to be very congested getting to the stadium. If you can, try to take public transportation or rideshare to Rate Field this weekend. All right, enough public service announcement, Jim. Let's talk about baseball. And I think for this series, it's very easy to get excited about Saturday to see what Davis Martin can do against the Chicago Cubs lineup. But I thought it was a curious decision by the White Sox to move Sean Burke back a day flip spots with Anthony Kay to have Kay face the Royals and have Sean Burke face the Chicago Cubs. Did you like this idea, and how much confidence do you have in this Friday night start for Sean Burke against this talented Cubs team?
Seems like it makes sense because the Cubs have fared better against lefties than righties. Like, Cubs offense has been pretty good overall, but like they definitely seem like they have an edge in all categories against lefties, to where if you like Burke better than Kay to begin with, and there's reason to do so right now, then you definitely like Burke versus Kay against the Cubs lineup the way they're presently hitting against pitchers of each hand. So I think that gives you a good starting spot for this decision. As for like Burke, like we're still kind of recognizing this new form to where he's throwing a wider variety of pitches, but also like the curveball is like a very reliable strike grabbing pitch, which hasn't been the case for him. So is it a matter of, was he just running hot with the curveball command? And like, speaking of tall pitchers, he's not Noah Schultz tall, but he is, 6'6" and does have a long list of command. Is it going to be a case where it goes in and out? He's had health issues in the past to where like, keeping his stuff 100% challenge. Like, does he do that? So like, it's a big start for him, like even if it weren't the Cubs, just because like trying to bounce back and show some ability to right the ship quicker than he has in past years. But against the Cubs, against one of their better pitchers, it's certainly and then like holding them back for the series does put some focus on him where it wasn't before. And he can do it. Like, he's pitched well enough to say like, yeah, he can bounce back. But there are a lot of elements or variables in his career thus far to where like, I don't have a hunch either way, and I'm going to be interested to see how it plays out.
Davis Martin starting on Saturday. Jim, I've got a feeling if Martin goes and does what Davis Martin has done all season, 6 innings, 7 innings, only allows 1 run against this Cubs lineup, I feel we will not be able to stop the momentum, nor do we want to stop the momentum. And people, I've not really been joking. He's already a top 5 pitcher in Major League Baseball. But I feel on a national level, Davis Martin All-Star Game, the bandwagon, lots of people will be jumping on, and he suddenly becomes a local surprise into a national surprise of who is this guy? Not many people know who Davis Martin is. That's where I feel like this is a big start for the Dart, where if he excels Saturday night against the Chicago Cubs, this is a national launch pad that should give him a lot more attention to the type of season that he's had. And maybe some expectations of Davis, cancel your plans middle of July. You're going to be in Philadelphia, buddy, in the All-Star game.
Especially since he's facing a flawed starter in Jameson Taillon. Like, Taillon is a little bit like Eric Fetty in the sense that he's giving up a lot of homers. And right now, he, in terms of ERA, he isn't paying for him yet, but could. Like, the FIP is nearly 2 runs higher than his ERA. Oftentimes it evens out. Sometimes it evens out in the other direction to where it comes down and matches the positive ERA. But oftentimes, like, especially you start getting a couple months in the season, the homers are a common theme to where eventually those homers start having guys on base and the ERA swells. So opportunity for the White Sox to, for their big bats to do some damage. And a great situation for Martin to outpitch somebody who can be outpitched. It's certainly cool. Like, Martin is, he's speaking about like improbable developments that make up for plan A not working out, like Shane Smith being optioned, then being injured in Charlotte, and like Davis Martin stepping in and being better than Smith was basically at any point last year. Pretty neat trick. And he's, the slider, I think, is really elevated his arsenal to give him that kind of swing and miss pitch that he got by without in previous years, but in ways that made you think like he was gettable. So before he would get outs, but you weren't exactly sure how. Now you have kind of a hunch of at least where he starts, and he has a lot of different routes he can go to from there once he establishes that pitch. So yeah, definitely his biggest test, but you hope based on just how repeatable it's been thus far that the size of the stage and even the talent of the offense wouldn't like make things meaningfully different. And yeah, you want to see him have that platform because the White Sox, they have at least a platform with Murakami. Like they have that kind of,
they have a whole country.
Yeah. They have like a talking point that is not like, look how bad these guys have been, like, or look how dysfunctional they are. Like they have talent that everybody appreciates. Like even when Garrett Crochet was good, by the time everybody got around to realizing it, he was throwing 4 innings a start and like not even getting halfway through, to where like it was more of like a sideshow or like like, hey, watch the first 4 innings of the White Sox, then tune out. In this case, it's Montgomery's another one that just you're seeing frontline players who are getting the attention of national outlets, national writers, analysts that haven't really paid attention to him. And then a guy like Davis Martin, who had no such profile in any country, stepping into this would certainly be just like especially for somebody who like handles the spotlight well or handles interviews, is an engaging personality. And you like hearing him talk, you like seeing him on camera, just explaining, how he does and being a good vibe ambassador for the White Sox. You'd certainly want him being in a position to present like what he's been able to show locally to a larger audience.
Longest tenured Chicago White Sox player on the roster.
Yeah.
Davis Martin.
It's
true.
It's strange, but true. But there have been some weird guys who have held that title in the past. So I guess it's perfectly fine that like Martin is the guy doing it now. But yeah, you hope that it's a case where, it's not like Lenine Sosa or Larry Garcia doing it. It's Davis Martin, and he's going to the All-Star game somehow.
The only matchup in this series that I'm a little worried about, and I hope that he squashes these fears, but there's been a lot of Alex Colomé vibes with Seranthony Dominguez. The Cubs have some really powerful left-handed bats. Even their switch hitters, I think, are better power hitting from the left side in this lineup, Jim. And that's the situation that I'm wondering in this series. If the game is tight, the White Sox have the lead, can Seranthony Dominguez hold on? Or do you think that Will Venable, who's already proved it this week, Dominguez is going to go up against the righties? And if PCA and Ian Happ are coming up, I'm going to Brian Hudson, even if it's the 9th inning. Could you see that played out?
Perhaps, especially depending on reliever usage up until that point or the day before. I think Dominguez, Venable has pointed him being the starter, comfortably identified him as the closer when he had been loath to do so in his first year.
He's got 10 saves.
He's got 10 saves. Like, he does seem like somebody whose arsenal regulates to the smallest possible margin. So like if it's a 1-run game, he might very well keep it 1 run. If it's 3-run game, it might be 1 run just because everybody or the tying run might have to come to the plate just because everybody's got to sweat it out. And that's only when, it's that kind of situation does Seranthony feel alive. But he hasn't shown enough where like the problems, when he's given up a homer haven't been consistent enough. Like he gave a homer to Bobby Witt Jr., like who's like,
awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome. And, he could afford to, and he's righty. Like it's not a case where like he's had some good games against lefties. He's had some bad games against lefties. So it's not a case where you're past the point of giving him the benefit of the doubt against lefties. You don't want to, I think, instill any kind of controversy if you don't have to. Like he's been fine. Keep letting him establish himself in this role after being out of it for a couple of years. And yeah, if it's a case where like he's pitching on consecutive days, and maybe give him the easier assignment if the spot in the lineup presents itself, especially if Hudson didn't pitch the day before or Newcomb didn't pitch the day before. But I wouldn't like avoid him before the Cubs prove it, which could be very painful if they prove it, like the high leverage situation the White Sox can't reverse. But at this point, he hasn't done enough to where you avoid him proactively, or I would say like at that point you're doing it out of fear versus like out of pragmatism. And I don't know if that's a way you want to manage somebody who's seems to at least project a lot of confidence, even though things might be swirling around him.
We will have a lot of coverage this weekend of the action between the White Sox and the Cubs, not only on our website at soxmachine.com, but also on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/soxmachine. I hope you guys have been enjoying the videos that we've been doing. We've been having our largest traffic days on our YouTube channel, so thank you guys so much for watching our coverage over on our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, you can do so again at youtube.com/soxmachine. But we'll be recapping this series on Sunday night for a podcast for you guys on Monday before the White Sox head out on the road. I'll also be heading on the road next week to Omaha to cover the Big Ten baseball tournament for Sox Machine, which means another chance to watch Rock Chalowski in person and report back to you guys on that front. Lots of activity coming regarding the Chicago White Sox, the Sox Machine. So again, thank you guys so much for tagging along with us on this wild ride to start 2026, but it's been very fun. For all those that have been around for a long time, this feels great. If you are new to Sox Machine, welcome. Stick around. We're not going to gatekeep.
Nope.
Especially for those that have recently introduced yourselves to me at the stadium as longtime lurkers. Post a comment, say hello, introduce yourself. Don't be strangers. It should be a fun time in the South Side this weekend. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. I already mentioned our YouTube channel, but again, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. We're on social media on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JRFegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, Major League Baseball, and the upcoming MLB draft, sign up to become a Sox Machine subscriber at soxmachine.com/products. Again, part of that coverage that you would unlock would be features like Jim just recently had regarding Miguel Vargas, and James has been doing more one-on-one interviews. We'll be getting some more information and intel from White Sox GM Chris Getz. That's type of coverage for our subscribers. So if you want
what do you have, Josh?
That intel.
What do you have coming up?
Well, I interviewed Nicole Lee, the 11th Ward Alderman, and we have some intel coming up on what Justin Ishbia is hoping to accomplish with the new White Sox Stadium and what Nicole Lee thinks about those plans, especially with Amtrak looking to expand and move its operations to Bridgeport. If you love messy Chicago politics, one seems to be brewing in Bridgeport. So if you want all that insight and coverage, again, everything about the Chicago White Sox, Major League Baseball, and we still got the MLB draft coming up in July with the White Sox having the #1 overall pick. Sign up to become a Sox Machine subscriber at soxmachine.com/products. Monthly plans start at $5. We also have discounts on annual subscriptions. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of soxmachine.com. You're for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.